They will not crush us.
This is my world. Oh, you took a wrong turn. Now you're stuck in my world. Trust me, this is gonna hurt. Pile it up and watch it burn.
You have to love yourself a fire.
Hey everybody, what is up? My name is Martin and welcome to TripleADigest. So I make Red Dead Redemption 2 videos and put them on the internet. So alongside our facts and character videos, we decided to give a full rundown of each character associated with Dutch's gang in Red Dead Redemption 2. Now for a more detailed look at certain characters, we have videos dedicated to Arthur Morgan, Dutch van der Linde, Javier Escuela, John Marcin, Bill Williamson and Abigail Roberts. But for now, here is every outlaw we can get to know within Dutch's gang, without spoilers and delving too deep, obviously. Number 1, the most obvious, Arthur Morgan. So he is our playable character and the gang's chief enforcer, practically raised by Dutch van der Linde, and at a young age he adopts Dutch's dream of a life lived free outside the rule of government and law. As the game begins, Arthur is almost blindly devoted to Dutch van der Linde due to his admiration, belief in his vision, and he obviously views Dutch as an important father figure in his life. When Arthur needed a positive influence in his life, Dutch van der Linde was there. Thus he follows Dutch's orders and executes his grand plans, which come in the form of heists, robbing from the rich, banks, collecting debts, providing resources for camp, and much more. So yeah, Arthur Morgan has a lot on his plate. Although a failed robbery shows chinks in Dutch's armour, as the gang are wanted dead or alive and are pursued across the country by the government and the land's best bounty hunters. This leads to some drastic decisions, furthermore serious questions from specific members of Dutch's gang in regards to the direction Dutch is taking them, and conflicts begin to arise within the camp, with Arthur their mediator. This extra stress and the poor decisions made by Dutch leads Arthur towards an existential crisis. He begins to question if his life has had any real meaning all this time, yet for the time being he remains by Dutch's side, always. The player will choose which path they want Arthur to take, that of a black hat, white hat, or somewhere in between, but just know Arthur Morgan is much more than your simple brute. Number 2, John Marcin. So Red Dead Redemption 1's leading protagonist John is recruited by Dutch's gang after leaving an orphanage in which he was raised during his teenage years, and it has been confirmed we'll see a slightly different side to John Marcin, the outlaw. He's unpopular within camp, he's viewed as a liability and overly confident by its leaders Dutch, Arthur and Jose Matthews. Quote, "You always did have a high opinion of yourself, John. Dutch always said you're an arrogant son of a bitch," and that's from your good old pal Bill Williamson. Yet he still tries hard to impress Dutch van der Linde through his actions, which often leads him into vulnerable situations in which the gang are forced to save him from and waste valuable resources. And despite the pressures of the outlaw life, he is raising a family while riding with the gang. His future wife Abigail Roberts and his son Jack Marcin also ride with Dutch and the gang. Number 3, Dutch van der Linde. So the notorious leader of the van der Linde gang, a man with a unique idealism, and he genuinely believes that he can make a difference in the world. He fights for the dying Wild West by becoming a champion of the people, and he quickly realizes forming a gang that believe in his common goal will have a larger impact on the world, so he does. So during the late 1800s to early 1900s, Dutch alongside gang members Arthur Morgan, Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, O'Shea Matthews, and much more together rob over 40 banks, and often joke about a grand prize for hitting the number 50, but they outmaneuver government officials, combat local law enforcement, and stage large heists with the grand goal of helping the underprivileged and freeing the region of government control, which leads to Dutch being viewed as a Robin Hood-esque character, a noble rebel opposing the law and government. So for years he's viewed as a hero among his followers, yet has become one of the most wanted figures in the country. It isn't until a robbery goes terribly wrong in the city of Blackwater, this failure triggers a chain of events that leads to questions in regards to the charismatic Dutch's leadership, which forces both Dutch and his gang of misfits down a dark and unforgiving path. Number 4, Bill Williamson. So another primary antagonist from Red Dead Redemption 1, Williamson was born in 1866 and joins the military in his early 20s, and it is here where he develops his skills as an expert marksman and his ruthless mentality. He is later discharged from the military and soon crosses paths with the van der Linde gang, eventually becoming a key member among them as an enforcer. He is ruthless, greedy, and very power hungry by nature, being one of the few members who lacks any real remorse. And based on the majority of his dialogue in Red Dead Redemption 1, he too is still blindly devoted to Dutch. And it is said he develops a bitter rivalry with John Marcin, and it is strongly hinted that he's had sexual relations with Abigail Roberts, Marcin's future wife, and he forms a strong connection to her, which further increases his resentment and jealousy for Marcin as she chooses him over Bill. And in 1906, a botched robbery leaves Marcin wounded and left for dead by his supposed family, and to quote Bill from Red Dead Redemption 1, "Dutch, Javier and I wanted you dead. We all did. And sometimes Sometime after leaving John for dead in 1906, Dutch goes off the radar, and Williamson, insane and delusioned by Dutch's own insanity, forms his own gang who reside in Fort Mercer. So even with or without the gang, Bill Williamson is one of the most wanted men in the county. Number 5, Javier Escuela. So another antagonist from Red Dead Redemption 1, born in the Mexican state of Nuevo Paraiso, alongside his drunk of a father, and he is a once Mexican revolutionary fighting for freedom, and it is here where he develops his skills as a sharpshooter, gains his keen eye for survival, and starts to revolve his life around fighting for freedom. Although he later becomes a bounty hunter, which leads him to America and inevitably into the path of Dutch van der Linde. So he is extremely loyal to Dutch, Arthur Morgan, and close friends with John Marston. Although when things take a turn for the worse for the gang, Javier takes it hard when the gang fall apart due to Dutch's insanity, and he returns to Mexico to work as a hitman for Linde to suppress freedom, contradicting his old way of life. Number 6, Myka Bell. So a dual-wielding outlaw and one of Dutch van der Linde's go-to gunmen. He is a career criminal and hitman. Also, he is quite possibly the most ruthless member among this band of misfits, which does say a lot because they're all violent, and he is wild and unpredictable yet lives for the action. And although aside from being a ruthless dual-wielding outlaw, Bell does show somewhat of a softer side during one of the story trailers as he comforts Arthur Morgan with the quote, "Sons of Dutch makes us brothers, sometimes brothers make mistakes." And he, like the majority of the members within camp, offers side missions as he states to Arthur, quote, "How about you and me go redistribute some property," as he's drunk. So this is just one example of the activities and missions that Arthur can do with his brothers. Number 7, O'Shea Matthews. So Matthews is second in command and the most experienced member of Dutch's gang, a master con artist, gentleman, yet thief. And he stumbles upon Dutch van der Linde during the year 1878 as both men attempted to rob one another with the quote, "Good old Dutch, my best friend, you know how we met? A pair of hucksters trying to rob each other back in 78 or thereabouts." So O'Shea is confirmed to be Dutch's closest friend and right-hand man, and has been for over 20 years. He's intelligent and quick-witted, and he can talk his way into or out of just about any situation. And he also has a great knowledge of the world, often detailing specific locations and settlements, and giving the player and Arthur Morgan more context, e.g. explaining the town of Valentine, its history, where it's located in the map to Arthur. Number 8, Charles Smith, who is a native wielding a sawed-off shotgun, and he's one of the youngest members of Dutch's gang and a recent recruit to their cause. And he's said to be a jack of all trades, a sharpshooter, enforcer, and brawler, very capable in a fight. And unlike the majority of members within Dutch's gang, Charles is a quiet and reserved person. Also, despite revolving his life around fighting for freedom by violent means, he is deemed an honest and decent human being, which often leads to some suspicion, but Arthur Morgan and Dutch van der Linde trust him wholeheartedly. Number 9, Satya Adler. So another outlaw and the most prevalent female character within the gang, in regards to the trailers at least. Now, unlike the majority of the gang whom fight for freedom, Satya's path is slightly darker. She is a recent widow, hell-bent on taking vengeance upon those who killed her husband, with the quote, "Nobody's taken nothing from me ever again." And in the trailers, she is wielding a knife, different rifles, 2 revolvers, and on multiple occasions she can be seen fighting alongside John Marston, and seems to have a close bond to Arthur Morgan. And Satya is said to be very loyal, committed, and has no fear, which is kind of similar characteristics to Arthur Morgan. And she is very much the wrong woman to cross, and it has been strongly suggested that she doesn't exactly get along with the majority of Dutch's gang, yet in trailer 2 she has the line, quote, "You're the only one of these fools that I trust," presumably aimed at Arthur Morgan. Also, Arthur states in the third trailer, quote, "We're more ghosts than people now," so the two clearly confide in one another. Number 10, Shawn Maguire, the experienced thief and sweet talker. So he is a cocky young Irish thief and an experienced stick-up man who comes from a long line of criminals. One of the more charismatic members of Dutch's gang, he often talks his way in and out of trouble with the quote, "Just leave it to me, I can talk a dog off a meat wagon," which I'm assuming he's lying about. And Shawn has been described as a wild card within the group, yet also a cheerful man who enjoys spending his time telling stories with enthusiasm around the campfire. One story being Shawn got into a brawl after trying to gun a man down, but soon realised he had no bullets in his gun. He's definitely Irish and an overly confident gunman, yet not exactly the most reliable, so he's looking to be an entertaining character within the camp. And next up we have Susan Grimshaw, sort of the harsh mother of the group. She serves as the group's primary mediator and does her best at keeping the gang from falling apart due to their infighting. So she tries to control all the big personalities within the camp, and she's gained Dutch's trust throughout the years, though she's given the power to make harsh decisions for the good of the camp. And it has been said that the gang would have disbanded and split years ago if it wasn't for her influence. So she plays mostly a non-violent yet a very important role within Dutch's gang. In terms of her personality, she's tenacious and iron-willed and stands for no nonsense. She views the majority of the gang's members as children who need to be put in their place from time to time with the quote, "I swear half of you would have just rotted in your own filth if nobody kept you in check." Number 12, Lana Summers. So Lana's father was murdered during during his younger years, and he actually avenged his father's death at the age of 15. Thus he was on the run, living freely and making a living through petty crimes until he stumbled upon Dutch and the gang. And his ideals align perfectly with Dutch van der Linde's, and he forms a strong connection to their gang and their overall goal of fighting for freedom. With the quote, "Living free out here like this, I wouldn't have it any other way." And in terms of his skill, he is smart, educated, competent with almost any weapon, very reliable in a fight and ambitious, yet he's always ready to do his part for the camp and his friend Arthur Morgan. Number 13, Karen Jones. Yeah, she's thick. I had to say it, someone in the comments would have. So Karen was recruited by Dutch and is an expert scam artist and one of the gang's trigger women, meaning she often ties up loose ends for Dutch and the gang, and is said to be a lover of the outlaw life in general. With the quote, "Living free, running scams, robbing banks, screwing over the rich, and horrible." And it can be worth noting that she can outdrink just about anybody at camp. You were warned. And number 14, Pearson. So he is otherwise known as the gang's cook slash butcher, and he formerly had a career in the Navy, which he often looks back at fondly and tells stories regarding his past. But during the year 1899, Pearson is a loud and jolly degenerate who's also somewhat in denial about his turn in life, from working in the Navy to becoming a butcher and cook for one of the most notorious gangs in the country. Although despite being slightly ashamed by his new role, he takes it very seriously and will often look to Arthur Morgan to fetch meat and other supplies in order to keep the gang well fed. Number 15, Uncle. So Uncle is an alcoholic and petty thief. He plays a minor role in RDR1 as a somewhat useless drunk and caretaker. And thankfully he is the same old uncle, and it has been stated that Arthur Morgan isn't exactly a fan of uncles, due to the fact that he mooches from the gang and is a typical good time guy. Uncle is always around when the whiskey is open and never around when any work has to be done, so he doesn't really contribute positively towards the gang. Yet he justifies it by saying, quote, "People call me lazy, I'm not lazy, just don't like working, that's all." Now despite being somewhat useless, Dutch still keeps Uncle around because he finds him so entertaining. Number 16, Abigail Roberts. So born in 1877 and recruited from an orphanage by Dutch and the gang, and her role within camp is working as a prostitute and keeping the men entertained during her early days. And that is confirmed by Dutch van der Linde with the quote, "You know, gentlemen, this man here, he married a whore, used to ride with us. We all had her, but he married her," aimed at John Marcin. Although she eventually falls in love with John Marcin and has a child called Jack. And these two, her family, become Abigail's primary focus and almost changed her perspective in life, leading to thoughts of leaving the gang behind and raising her family in a safer environment. Number 17, Jack Marston. So Jack is 4 years old during the year 1899 and has grown up with the gang, who he too views as his family. All his uncles and aunts who all attempt to shield Jack from the harsh realities of their true nature and the violence in the world. So they are all protective of Jack Marston, especially his mother Abigail. And his innocence often actually keeps the gang human, with the quote, "Did you catch the bad guys?" And although little does he know at the time, it is indeed Jack who catches the biggest bad guy of them all during the ending of RDR1. Number 18, Molly O'Shea. So originally from Dublin, Ireland, Molly joined Dutch van der Linde and his gang at some point prior to 1899, and it is said Molly is the object of Dutch's affection for a short period of time at least. And unlike the majority of the gang, Molly doesn't feel deeply connected to the gang's overall goal of fighting for freedom and the dying Wild West. Molly is too high strung for a life on the run, yet has become accustomed to the life Dutch has given her. Although with the added stress of fleeing the federal government's pursuits, things start to drastically take its toll on Molly and her relationship with Dutch van der Linde. Number 19, Mary Beth Gaskill. So she was actually recruited through her ability to find specific scores and other money-making opportunities. So Mary Beth is a kind, good-natured young woman, yet an expert con artist and thief. Her ability to act innocent is what makes her the perfect criminal. By the time people realize they've been duped, Mary Beth is already on her way home with the money. Number 20, Leopold Strauss, aka the Money Man. So Dutch's personal loan shark and the gang's bookkeeper. Originally hailing from Austria, he is a stern man who lacks emotion and remorse to some extent. Although he's almost useless in a gunfight, he's practically the gang's secretary. He can offer Arthur Morgan names and locations of debts that are due to be paid, hence why we see Arthur in one of the trailers basically running around screaming, "Where's our money, bitch? And you got some money for me, boy? I've seen your name in our ledger." So yeah, it is Leopold who has that ledger. And then we have number 21, Reverend Swanson. So he's once a somewhat successful priest who has literally lost it all through both an alcohol and sex addiction, which leads to the loss of his career, his family, who are forced to leave him, and in doing so, Swanson loses his faith in God. He hits rock bottom, yet through unknown circumstances, Swanson somehow saves Dutch van der Linde's life in the past. Thus, Dutch aims to repay that debt by allowing Swanson to find a new purpose by riding alongside the gang in their fight for freedom. Yet it has been said that his usefulness has run out a long time ago, and what he actually does at camp is kind of unknown. Number 22, Tilly Jack. Jackson. So formerly a member of another established gang, yet after meeting Van der Linde and learning of his idealism and motivation, she joins his cause. Although still young, Tilly has been an outlaw from the age of 12. Growing up starving and afraid, the life of an outlaw was essentially forced upon her. So Tilly is extremely savvy in regards to how to survive in the Wild West. She is resilient yet trustworthy, and despite being relatively new, she isn't afraid to speak her mind and offer some much needed input when it's needed. Number 23, Josiah Trelawney. So a flamboyant conjurer, conman and trickster who is extremely reliable when it comes to leads for the gang, may it be bank robberies, train heists or other money making opportunities. And he has an extremely interesting quote, "How can romance be silly? It's all we have," which could simply be a pickup line, but I personally lean towards this being aimed at John or Arthur, because yes, having a romantic relationship while you're literally wanted dead or alive is silly, but Trelawney offers comfort with "it's all we actually have." And I don't want to go too far without mentioning, yes, he does resemble the strange man from Red Dead Redemption 1. I'm not saying it's him, I lean towards it being maybe a different character, but he looks like him, and the description of a trickster and conjurer would fit, but who knows really, we'll find out when we play the game for ourselves. Yeah guys, that is every member of Dutch's gang with some small details of what you can expect from each character. And we have one more facts video on the way, which will have between 30 and 40 new facts. And as always, I have a question, and it's a pretty big one. So there are 23 members of Dutch's gang. In your opinion, who is definitely going to die during this game? And I don't want legitimate spoilers, just your opinion. This is Rockstar. Surely all 23 members aren't surviving this story. And personally, if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with O'Shea Matthews. Narratively, it makes sense, and it would push Dutch right over the edge into insanity, losing his best friend and the gang's voice of reason. So let me know in the comments so I can see who made it this far into the video. And seriously, thank you so much for watching. All the support on the channel has been crazy, and to you guys and to the OGs, we love you. And for more Red Dead Redemption 2 content like this, stay tuned here on TripleADigest. And fuck IGN.
Everything's absolutely splendid.
Walking down the street and you hear that heavy